control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I hope you're having a wonderful night. It's hump day. You've made it through the tough part. Now it's all downhill till the weekend, and we've got a hell of a show lined up for you tonight. But before we get into any more of that, first let me introduce my good friend, my co-host, my pilot on the craft of the portal abroad, Mr. Don Longbeard. How you doing, brother?
Hola, humans.
Humans. Did you go full cat on me?
Yeah, whatever. Hello, how are you? Happy hump day.
Happy hump day, man. How's your week treating you?
So far it sucks, but, that's because it's like, hump day,
But it'll get better now, right?
It'll get better.
All right. It'll get better. Yeah. So what do you think? We got a great show tonight, huh?
Yeah, I think we'll be okay tonight.
Yep.
We got that big brother of ours out there.
The big brother's with us, ladies and gentlemen. I am absolutely thrilled that we're going to have an epic show, an epic guest for you guys tonight. I hope you're all ready. But I suppose first I should do this. I hope you're ready because we're going in. All right, Don. Are you all set?
No.
All right. Well, we're as set as we're going to be.
Look at this.
What? Oh, no. Your computer
just restarted.
Your computer just totally bricked on you.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, Don will be with us in a moment, but he's here at least live on the horn with us. The camera's working.
That's
so
true.
Everything else is fine. You just don't have anything to look at. But we have an amazing guest joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He's a longtime friend of the show, longtime friend to Don and I personally. The gentleman who's joining us tonight is a really an incredible figurehead and mainstay in the Bigfoot world. He's a man who has a lifetime of experiences, both pursuing them and just growing up around them. And he also started a lot of the media that you enjoy today. He was one of the pioneers bringing Bigfoot entertainment to the masses through the internet and through a whole bunch of different forums, and of course, he's the original Bigfoot outlaw. We are, of course, joined by the one and only Mr. Jim the Bear King.
Big Brother Bear.
Big Brother Bear's with us. How you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing great, guys. How about y'all? I hear old Don, he done loosened up a lot over the years. He done got to be an asshole.
Well, things happen.
No, I like this Don. I rather deal with people that are straight, and
Right.
I like a straight Don.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we like Don too. He's the colorful character on the show for sure.
That's true.
Like I'm the straight guy and Don's the
Wait. I want to be a straight guy too.
Okay, well.
No hesitation, none.
None at all. Wow. He didn't miss a beat there, did he? All right, so
Nope.
let me rephrase that.
Thank you.
Whereas I'm the serious one a lot of times.
Okay.
Don will come from deep left
There
from
you
sometimes.
go. All right. I prefer
keeps-
deep right, but okay.
Oh my God. Wow. All right. This might take a while, Bear. We'll get to you in a minute.
And now for our big brother Bear.
So welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for being here with us. You've been on the show a few times, and it's been an absolute pleasure every time. In fact, one of the first show we did with you, you were on location out on, I don't know if you call it a research trip or an expedition, or if you guys were just
He
out.
was booger hunting.
You were boogering.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's it.
But you've had an incredible lifetime of experience with these beings, and it started at a very early age. And if you wouldn't mind, could you kind of recap your journey for any of those out there listening that may not be familiar with who you are?
Well, it had to happen in 1966. I was 6 years old. Me and my brother, we shared a bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the country, no air conditioner. We had a box fan put in the window in the dining room at the other end of the house, and it was facing outward. I know the time of the year it was. It was August, about the end of August, September.
Okay.
It was hot outside. I remember me and my brother was asleep, and something woke us up outside our bedroom window on a rise above the back of our backyard. On top of that slope of a rise was a 4-strand, 5-strand barbed wire fence. And something was clicking and cooing at the same time outside that window, and it woke me up. I never had an idea what it was or what it was doing. Of course, there was no lights on in the house, and so our eyesight must have been a pretty older moon phase, because it was kind of bright outside. You could see out back.
Okay.
And you can see from the bed. Actually, the bed was at the west side of the house. The window outside the house looking on this slope was to the east, and something was going woo, woo, woo. Woo, 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 woo.
Wow.
Well, I woke up and recognized that it was coming out the window, and so I raised up. I remember raising up on the bed, and I was looking out the window, and something was draped over that barbed wire fence, slowly swaying back and forth. It was, to the right, to the left, slowly swaying. Its arms was draped over the fence, almost touching the ground on our side of the fence, and it was just making this cooing, clicking sound. And of course, me looking at it and seeing it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I woke my brother up. And he took one glimpse and he hauled ass. He don't let the dust settle underneath his feet when he sees or thinks he sees something he ain't supposed to be seeing. He gets a good case of the get the hell gone. And fear is contagious, and so I chased after him, and he ended up in my mother's bed on the west side of the house. I jumped into bed too, and I remember him telling my mom there was a big monkey or an ape outside our bedroom window, blah, 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 so on and so on. I do remember Mama settling us down, but she didn't get up to go see if there was one outside the bedroom window either, so, I guess we kind of broke even on that one.
Wow. Do you think looking back, did she know about these things before then?
I knew that's why I was able to pinpoint the date so well, because I remember the date. That was when my mother and my father separated. We lived out in the country. And Mom was there basically as a single mom by herself.
Sure.
And we was I don't think there would have been no way in hell you'd have got her to get out of that bed to go see if there's anything outside our bedroom window, even if she was brave enough to do it or not.
Okay. Wow. Then there was another experience up there too. When you guys.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
We moved in with my grandparents. You know, Mom couldn't keep the house. She couldn't afford the house payments. That was the only acre of land we lost in all the years we've owned the property.
Mm.
She couldn't keep up the house payments and everything, so we had to move in with my grandparents. Well, when we did, that was just around the corner. It was on the same property, about a mile down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my brother and my sister, this was in 1970 or 71. I can't remember for sure whether I was 10 or 11 when this occurred. But me and my brother and my sister were catching lightning bugs, or what other people, Yankees, call fireflies.
Oh, sure.
And we called them lightning bugs. We'd get a mason jar each and punch holes in them with an ice pick and, put a little grass in there and catch all the lightning bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in the bedroom at night when we go to bed, and there you have your own show until you wake up the next morning and they're all deader than hell because you done took all the oxygen away from them. But they served their purpose that night, We had been told by my grandfather to come on in several times. It was getting dark. Of course, when it gets dark, that time of the year, a lot of snakes start crawling too, and we was running out there in the back pasture.
Mm-hmm.
And he come a third time to the back door to try to gather us up, and he seen something move on the fence line farther to his left, kind of in front of where me and my brother and sister were running all across this pasture chasing down lightning bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing started loping toward us on all fours, and my grandfather didn't have time to grab anything, a gun or anything. He just bailed out the back door and started screaming and hollering toward us kids out there in the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, didn't see what this was coming toward us. We just heard my grandfather acting crazy in a way that he's never done, before.
Sure.
And so we all stopped what we was doing and turned immediately around to look at my granddaddy because, he's never acted like this before. It was very strange behavior coming from him.
Sure.
And we got to noticing that he was looking to our right at something across the pasture from where we was. So we turned around and saw this thing loping towards us on all four legs. It was using his knuckles on its arms where his hands was, and it was just loping toward us. Well, there goes my brother again. He takes out running. He leaves me and my sister standing there holding the lightning bugs, I reckon you'd say. My sister's legs her legs just melted out from under her.
Yeah.
And she hit the ground screaming.
Right.
And well, when she hit the ground screaming, I was torn between trying to chase after my fear is infectious brother who was hauling ass or staying with my sister. And I was looking back and forth between my granddaddy and this thing was going to get to us before my granddaddy ever thought about it.
Yeah.
He turned the corner in the pasture to get around the barbed wire fence. And when he did, he came within sight line of this thing that was loping towards me and my sister.
Mm-hmm.
When it recognized that my grandfather was running up there to where me and my sister was, it come to a slow stop and then stood up on two legs as tall as erect height-wise as it could.
Mm-hmm.
And it had an embarrassed look, in my opinion, on its face, like I got caught. I wasn't supposed to get caught. I think it got wrapped up into hearing me, my brother, and my sister squealing and
Sure.
laughing and cutting up while we was chasing those lightning bugs, and it just wanted to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It to a certain degree. It never felt at any time like there was going to be any harm done toward me, my brother, or my sister.
Sure.
And when my grandfather run up there to us, of course, my sister grabbed him. He picked her up, and this thing had slowly started walking to its left toward the cedar thicket that was at the north end of the pasture then, but it was always looking over its right shoulder back at us. It never would take its eyes off of us. But it did it on two legs, whereas when it first come across the pasture, it was loping on quadrupedally, 4 legs.
Wow. That must have been a nightmare. I mean, it's the kind of thing that just gets tattooed in your mind, yeah?
Well, it stays there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of problems with a lot of people who claim they get into this and they've seen this one, they've seen that one, they've got video, they've got this, they got that, and they can just so easily walk away from this. There's no way you can walk away from this.
Yeah. It's when Don and I were at the festival this last weekend, there was a mannequin Bigfoot set up, and it was an 8-footer.
Yep.
And it was the first time I really, like, you hear things like, oh, it was 8-foot Bigfoot. It was 8 or 10 feet or 9 foot. And it's really hard to get an idea of what that means. Mm-hmm. But when I was standing next to this thing looking up, it's like, okay, now I kind of understand what that means. And that's horrifying. If that was alive and coming at me.
I've seen the picture of you and Don standing by the thing at the Squatch Fest. And that was big. Now, one time we had an outing outside of Lufkin, Texas,
mm-hmm.
and I had a yardstick, and it was a 12-foot yardstick. So she had a big old oak tree out there next to her yard. The host of we had about 20-something people show up at this thing,
mm-hmm.
and somebody said, could you give me an idea? I said, I can come close, but it's nothing like the real thing.
Right.
What I did was took that yardstick and only made it 10 foot tall, and I used some tape,
mm-hmm.
and I taped off the 10-foot mark. Then I took it and I centered it on 2.5 feet and spread it out 5 feet wide.
Right.
From up about where a 10-foot tall one's shoulders would apt to be.
Mm.
And they took pictures of that, and they could not believe the massive size that actually is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are seeing what Dan Rickey, one of the outlaws, call gangbangers. That's who he calls these juvenile teenage Bigfoot creatures.
Uh-huh.
That's what a lot of people see more than they see anything. They stand anywhere from 7.5 to 9 feet tall.
Jeez.
It's rare that anybody has seen what is considered an alpha, which is anything 10 foot or taller. I don't see them getting monstrous size, but I do see them getting at least possibly in the 12-foot tall range.
My God.
And that's tall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all kinds of tall. That has just got to be absolutely horrifying to come out. And it depends, I suppose, on the proximity. But I mean, just knowing what these things are capable of and how quickly they could move. I mean, even if they're 50 yards away, they could close that in a blink.
Yes, and 8 foot tall. That's not even full grown size yet.
Yeah,
and that's still in and of itself massive. When you see it with no bars between you and it, or no cage, or no glass partition, or no TV screen, that in and of itself puts it in a whole different ball game too. You know?
Yeah. I think it would too, because I'm sure there's a dark side to these things as well. I mean, there's probably a full spectrum of behaviors that are exhibited, but I imagine there's there's, you hear the stories about the ones that might be rogues that were kicked out and out of maybe a clan group or a family group and are doing their own thing. And I bet you they could be aggressive. I bet you there's a possibility for that. And you just don't know. As soon as that, becomes visible, you have no idea what those intentions are.
Yeah, you don't know which way that's going to go.
Right.
Well, I can promise you probably 98.6% of encounters with humans, if there's any evil or any retribution thrown back, I guarantee you it was the humans that started it, either inadvertently or ignorantly with Bigfoot.
Yeah. Say there's a comment in our chat by one of our mods, Rachel gets it right. She says it's interesting that those types of sounds that you were hearing back in the, in the house when you heard the clicking and the mewing, but she says the sounds at the fence are similar to what humans use to attract cats, dogs, or other animals we want to lure closer. And I thought, wow, that's a good insight.
I've looked at it. When you run into something, especially like the first and second and third encounters or whatever, you put all these various clues together to maybe come up with an answer for why it was doing what it was actually doing. I'll give you a brief synopsis of the story. Others have heard the whole story. Okay. What I didn't tell was, why did that booger decide that night to drape over that barbed wire fence outside me and my brother's bedroom window? Don't know what time it was in the morning, or even if it was just midnight or so. I just know that we had gone to bed and went to sleep. Here's some things that were going on that I didn't mention in the first story.
Okay.
I mean, other stories, and you know this yourself, when I told it, I was being very brief. What I neglected to tell was my baby sister was 6 weeks old in a crib or a bassinet in the same room as my mom. I'm sure that she, as a baby, that young, may have cried or been restless in its sleep or, so forth and so on. Who knows? The alpha male of the house, which was my dad, like I said, had just recently moved out. So being out in the country like we was, a brand new baby in the house, the alpha male is physically and notably not around. We're wondering if me and my brother could have jabbered, baby talked in our sleep. As I said earlier, a newborn baby in the house.
Sure.
We think that the one over the fence was, I kind of got the general idea, thinking about it all these years, maybe it was trying to calm down my baby sister in the other room.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty powerful.
Because, see, it had about 8, maybe up to 10 yards away from where it was draped over that fence, and we could see it in the bedroom window. If it wanted to, it could have come up to the window pane itself, but it didn't. It stayed out there. The distance length of the barbed wire fence. And, you think back on everything that you've been told and that you learned over the years, and why did that one pick that night to do that? And when you take it, like I said, if it was meaning to be harmful or anything, it seemed to me like it would have been closer to the window, but it wouldn't.
Right.
And if it can just drape its two upper arms over across the window and just press down, it could have easily stepped over that damn barbed wire fence.
Yeah, it's a good thing it didn't. Wow, that's terrifying.
Well, 6 years old, it was bad enough. My brother deserted me, and then anyway, I mean, hell, I was trying to keep up with him. I didn't want to get hit.
Now, you've of course got a lifetime of looking for these things or being confronted with them, and I'm wondering how How has your opinion of these things changed over the years? I mean, has your idea of them evolved quite a bit over time, or has it pretty much stayed the same?
That's a good question, because it depends on my maturity levels in life,
Sure.
When I was younger, it was embedded in me and my brother to never talk about these things with anybody, not even in jest, not being serious.
Mm-hmm.
People would not, it's just a subject that you just don't bring up in front of anybody and everybody, because a lot of people want to make light of it. A lot of people want to laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you can cope with the situation. So we went from that to the point where we knew they was there. It's not a matter of we're not believers, we're knowers. I mean, when you see them with the regularity we did as a family, my granddaddy would see them at different times, my brother would, I would, we'd see them together when we're going to check on the fences around the place.
Mm-hmm.
Then as I got older, my brother passed away, so there went my research partner. My granddaddy stayed with me on it, because he was always saying, if you ever want to learn what's out in the forest with you, the only teacher there is if you go out there and learn it on your own.
Right.
Mm.
The best teacher in life is experience.
Sure.
And, I mean, there's not too many people out there, even with us, thinking forever. We never considered this thing a Bigfoot, because we didn't know what a Bigfoot was. All we knew of them as was Boogers or Booger Man or something like that,
Sure.
That word's been around a long time in the South.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden we start hearing this thing in the Pacific Northwest called the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch.
Sure.
Hell, we're seeing Boogers over here. And when me and my brother finally was exposed to the Roger Patterson Gimlin
The film.
16 millimeter footage,
Mm-hmm.
they was calling this thing a Bigfoot. We're seeing a lot of similarities with what we know them as in the South is as a booger. We've always called them boogers. Then my grandfather passed away in the 90s, and it was just me. And this is before the internet come around. Then the internet pops up. My wife at the time tries to sell me on getting a computer, so I refused to get a computer, so I ended up agreeing to get one of those computer TVs. I think that's what they was called in the 1999.
Okay.
Well, anyway, when she got that thing and opened up the world of Bigfoot, that's when I got into the internet Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to meet people and talk to the people of all walks of life. It even got to the point where a lot of people were going out and hunting these things. And so I got in with a group that I was going to do this too, but it was like I was wanting to kill one for all the wrong reasons,
Sure.
And so I got out of that, which was the best thing could ever happen, because once I got out of that part of my life with Bigfoot, I become more calmer, more respectful in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
My actions, my body language, my walking through woods become calmer and looser. And it seemed like every time I turn around, because of my experience throughout all them years of them being on the property that I lived upon, I was able to train myself better
Mm-hmm.
into being a more observer than wanting to prove its existence or anything like that. And it's really been a lot more fun. It's really has been a lot more adventurous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing it in a more respectful way of doing it than I've ever done it before, and it seems more gratifying.
Right. Hey, Bear, what do you think your life would be like had you been going out and still going out, depending on, had you kept actually hunting them? What do you think your life would have turned out like then?
When you put into that position, you start thinking about, first and foremost, you're selfish as hell.
Okay.
For even wanting to, and I'll tell you why. You just want to kill one just to show everybody else, look, I told you all this time it was there. But before you even pull that trigger on that booger, you're taking a part of an integral member of a family unit that relies on each member of that troop for its survival. So that takes organization. Organization means these things sit back and figure out a game plan before they start getting in the middle of something that they don't understand anything about. In other words, they got their shit together, And you think about it, they got to.
Yeah.
They cannot exist as long as they have and not exist, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
Sure.
I already said once, I'm not a believer, I'm a knower. I know they're out there. And to know these things for this long have remained unhidden, except to those who are hard-headed enough to stick with it.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess it's hard-headedness. I know it's a lot of fun, and like I said, it's one of the greatest adventures a person could have ever lived his whole life, chasing after something that he is told does not exist.
Right.
Yeah. I've wasted a hell of a lot of time, haven't I?
Well, I don't know. We sure appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you're right. I think that's very profound because, you're doing it. The way you're approaching it now is because you're just on a journey. This is for you to understand. And I think that would be a hell of a
It's even branched out further than that, brother.
Yeah. Okay.
I love to deer hunt more than anything in the world. I love to hunt any game. I started when I was young. I learned how to be respectful. It has gotten to the point where being out in the woods with these things, whether you're hunting or whatever you're doing, I'm not mad at anything else anymore. I don't kill any deer anymore. I don't kill any rabbits. Yes, I take a firearm with me during regular hunting season, but I'm not out there to prove myself to anybody anymore.
Right.
That's how far the respect has driven itself to be. It's not a priority to go out there and just kill something for the sake of killing anymore. I just go out there to be a part of it, and it is so much better that way.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
But I imagine it's a hell of a responsibility to try to go out there and prove it to the world. I mean, and perhaps that whole approach in and of itself is part of the problem. Why a lot of times people don't find much is because they're kind of going at it for the wrong reasons. And if you got that pressure, you're going to try to force something to happen that probably is never going to happen. But if you go out there with, I'm on a journey, I'm just having a good time in the woods, I think that outlook would probably draw them in a lot quicker than, going out there with a huge team full of mechanical equipment and gear, hoping to find something to bring back.
I believe you're so correct in that total assessment. I really do. A lot of it has to do with how you are inside. If you're out there searching for something, even hunting and the act of hunting in and of itself, you exude a predator type syndrome that premates all around you, and it's negative vibrations, actually.
Sure.
Because anything that's negative that makes everything else nervous, it has to be a negative vibe.
Right.
And if you go out there with no I gotta kill one. I gotta kill this deer. I gotta kill this buck. I gotta, and everything. You know, you'd hear a darn acorn fall out of a tree. You are darting in on it like a radar, and your whole demeanor, your whole outlook. It's like you throw a pebble into a pond. Mm-hmm. The ripples are going to come all the way back to the bank and then start going back toward the source where the disruption occurred. Mm-hmm. Wildlife knows this, and if people don't think Bigfoot does not listen to wildlife, they need to start all over, because that is Bigfoot's biggest alarm system, is the local wildlife in and around the area where he's located at.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think they know how the birds behave when everything's okay and how they behave when things are not right. You know, they know the sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And a squirrel will start barking in a heartbeat. Blue jay will give you away.
Yep. Crows.
Yes. And they know what's going on around them, and it's the vibrations in the woods. Mm-hmm. And believe you me, if a disruptive force come within the woods, first they would have to locate where it's at. Two, it would probably evade it with any means possible.
Sure. Yeah. And they're obviously pretty well adept at moving around the woods, whereas I think we're pretty clumsy.
No doubt. No doubt.
No, I think it's...
They know dang near where every stick is.
Sure.
I'd almost say they're that good.
Right. And do you think that's why they avoid trail cams, is that they can just pick them out like a sore thumb? Or do you think that it's possible they actually see the infrared?
A lot of times, infrared, they can definitely see.
Okay.
We did that. We learned that from working on a game camera in the living room, and the dog was going nuts. And what we didn't know at the time, we had accidentally tripped the infrared light. And the dog was, I mean, shoot, I was ready to shoot him. I thought he done gone rabid or something. He was barking and snapping at every damn thing in the room, you know.
Wow.
Then we figured out what it was. So I know if a dog can see infrared, a booger dang sure can. Mm. What gets me is a lot of people humanizing them. And what I mean by humanizing something, we're humans. We can only hear in a certain hearing frequency zone. Mm-hmm. There's a certain range for us. I found a piece of paper or something, it was last week. It was given the hearing frequency ranges of humans versus other mammals.
Okay.
And we're mighty poor hearing, I'm telling you. And if you don't think, a lot of people, they say, well, I'm whispering, you know, but I can hear you whispering.
Yeah.
Well, if we just what we consider whispering, but say a dog or something of a higher hearing frequency is about 30, 40 yards away and nothing going on around you, that darn dog's going to hear you and it's going to respond to you. And it's the same way with a Bigfoot. I wonder at times if the hearing frequency range where it trips a battery in, say, a camera or a video machine or whatever, if it trips that battery, can the game hear it? Uh-huh. And I think they can, because if you'll see a lot of exposures from game cameras, most of the wildlife is already looking at the darn camera before the camera snaps.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
So that tells me right there that they're hearing the batteries when they trigger.
Ah, or at least the electronics. Yeah, that's probably true. Because I know like capacitors can like whine and squeal at a high pitch at points, you know, so I'll bet you that's probably dead on. They're probably hearing a lot more than we think they are.
Probably.
Well, I know that the humanizing factor what ruins a lot of it. In other words, that's where humans try to make more out of something that's not human-like. And that's where a lot of problems are. A lot of people want this thing to be classified as a human. And I agree toward the protection of it, yes.
Yeah.
But other than that, leave it alone.
Right. That's interesting.
How in the hell has Bigfoot got along without us all the way up until this point in time anyhow?
Apparently real well.
Yeah, does it need our help for any damn thing? I don't think not.
Right. We got another question in the chat as well, Bear, and it's from Rachel again, and she says, I've always wondered about the tree knocks. Are Bigfoot using an open hand and slapping the tree, or is it a tree limb or a large rock they pick up and use? What do you think?
I know there's a difference between what we call tree knocking and then what we call chest slapping.
Oh, okay.
But the sounds are very similar. The difference between the two is the meteor sound is chances are it's a chest slap, whereas anything time wood on wood occurs, you're going to hear that knock. It's going to knock.
Sure.
And whereas a slap that's what it sounds like, a meaty slap on the chest. But at a distance, if you don't listen for the echoing, which more with tree knocks, you're going to get more of an echo than you will off of a chest slap. It's going to be more solid in its chest area.
Oh, okay. Now, what about rocks though? Because I know that I think it's the Cherokee, or some tribe.
Some people. I've never heard what they call rock clacking. That's
Okay.
where they get one rock and hit another rock with it.
Right.
I've never personally heard it myself.
Okay.
I have heard the chest slapping, and I have heard the wood knocks. At one time, I had it down to decent. I could carry on a conversation with one for about 35, 40 minutes. Usually when they knock twice, you would respond with one. If they knock once, you would respond with two. Usually if you hear three knocks, it used to up there around my granddad's place sort of meant, hey, is anybody listening? Are you paying attention? We realized that a lot of the knocks was after they spread out during the daytime. They have sentinels, in other words, outline separate, usually a juvenile that they trust, and they'll put them in these positions so that they could watch outward. It's usually in an entangled woods area, looking out across an open bottom or something.
Okay.
And the sound travels real good from them. And they'll get bored about 10 or 11 in the morning, and they'll knock just to see if the other sentinel is awake or whatever. It's fun to hear them when they communicating with each other. It's hard to find that because you've got to go to very isolated areas in this country to hear it. They don't play it every day in more civilized suburbs across this country. It's usually deep in the woods or in the swamp when I've heard this before.
Okay. That's really interesting. I got to wonder that, there has to be, like you say, a language to those knocks. And I think it's very interesting that you kind of had sorted out the code, what to do when you heard 1 versus 2 versus 3. I think that's magnificent. But another question that I have is, I just interviewed a gentleman by the name of Shane Corson of the Olympic Project, and they've found nests. And I found the whole discussion to be incredibly interesting, talking about these nests they look like big bird nests, but they're on the ground. Very similar to what they say gorillas do up in the the mountains, and the lowland gorillas will make these nests. Have you ever run into something like that?
I've run into one in an abandoned house one time.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was a back room of an abandoned house, and not many people knew the house was there.
Okay.
And we would use it like when we was hunting and it would start raining, we could actually go sit on the front porch of this house and watch a clear cut. In the back of the house, though, something had busted in through the back windows, and it had caved all the flooring out of the back bedroom into the ground. There was an old mattress and all that, and it ripped the mattress up and interwove it it was like a circle around that darn house. To be frank and honest with you, it looked kind of like Big Bird's nest off of Sesame Street. Only it was made out of garbage and everything, and it would push its feces, and there was old bird bones and other stuff interlaced in the stuffings all around the circumference. But see, if anybody ever come on the front porch, it could easily escape out the back window, which it was doing. And we never actually caught anything in it, but we kind of knew what created it.
Wow. They're very opportunistic, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. They'll take advantage of anything and everything. Years ago, back in the 80s and the 90s, probably the early 90s, for erosion purposes, especially in the South, along creeks or stream beds or even some rivers, for erosion purposes, they used to park old gutted out cars and truck chassis, to keep the banks from washing out. Sure. When a big storm would come around, y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Sure.
Talking about?
Yeah.
These suckers over there near my granddaddy's place, one of them come in through the back window of an old 56 or 57 Chevrolet and tore out the back springs and the seats, what was left in those vehicles, and made them a little den out of the trunk of that dang car on the riverbank.
Wow. That's fascinating. Huh. Yeah, I guess whatever's available. It's the low hanging.
I found them. Yeah, they love old smokehouses.
Oh.
If you can find an old smokehouse, that even way back yonder in the 1800s, where they used to hang smoked meat from the ceiling, and during the summer they would sweat over all the burlap wrapping, and all that sugar and salt would drip between the planks onto the ground itself. Mm-hmm. If you can find old house places that had an old smokehouse, I guarantee you there's chances are that boogers are hanging around that spot for the salt that drip off the rafters of those smokehouses in years gone past.
Oh, wow. So do you suppose that the inland ones, maybe not the ones along the coasts and stuff, but the inland ones then may very well be hitting livestock salt licks and deer salt licks and things like that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there's no doubt, man. None at all. Find artesian wells or sulfur springs or mineral salt licks, natural salt licks, old game trail things, places like that. Yes. Booger is a carnivore. It is a meat eater. It has to have salt.
Oh, okay. But they're also an omnivore, right? Like they don't just exclusively eat.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So they eat all kinds of things.
But sometimes of the year they can't help but be carnivores.
Sure. Yeah, I suppose in the fall and winter there's not a lot of berries and roots to dig up. Yeah.
That's it.
Wow. Huh. Now I got to ask you this, because this is something that I've always wondered personally, but did you ever notice throughout the years of looking into these things, was there any one season that they seem to be most active in? And what do you think is causing, if it is, what is the cause potentially for that increased activity?
One of the times that I've noticed a lot more activity is for around central Alabama, central Mississippi, possibly certain parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. in February or March, they seem like they increase their activity.
Oh.
They're coming off of a strong winter where it's lean pickings. In other words, unless you just had a steady supply of food, which they don't at that time of year.
Mm-hmm.
This is before what I call the green up, or the spring of the year, when everything starts busting wide open.
Sure.
When they start that time of the year around here, for some reason it seems like they starting to breed with each other, and I don't know. It's mighty funny. I call it the nights of unrest. What I mean by that is, it's always after February the 15th to about the middle of March. All the domestic animals, the cows, the horses, the dogs, everything around here, along with feral life like coyotes and other wild animals, they all just really start getting to acting like something's keeping them awake at night. And they're hearing something that we as humans cannot hear, or we don't recognize if we heard it. And it's keeping all the domestic and feral animals upset at night. And I think a lot of it could be because of the potential breeding activity of these things that time of year. I've seen it happen too many times over too many years around that same period. Now, I talked to a researcher in Ohio about it, and see, Ohio stays colder longer than it does down here in the South. In other words, the spring for that time of year in Ohio may come a lot later than it does in the South. Well, that's when he says he notices the same pattern with creatures up there in Ohio. I talked to somebody out in New Mexico and Arizona about the same thing, and they said that theirs even starts as early as December and January. Wow. So all these changes are occurring for certain reason that we as humans do not understand or know anything about. For all that type activity to increase to the extent it's causing all the animals, domestic or feral, to act really uneasy.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know that it's certainly no doubt that animals, domestic or otherwise, seem to definitely react when these things are around. Like, you hear the stories of like everything going quiet, dead quiet, like at the drop of a pin. It's like even the crickets shut up, and it's like, wow, that's really intense.
Yeah, it is. I learned that when insects or frogs and things like that go silent, that instead of it being a infrasonic sound, it's an ultrasonic sound. And that again goes back to what I mentioned earlier about
the hearing range. Yeah.
Us as humans, yes, we can't hear half the stuff that a lot of the wildlife out there can hear.
Right.
And they, believe it or not, are responding to what they can only hear.
Right. We got a couple.
And if we can't hear it, we can't respond to it.
Right. Yeah, we don't even know what's happening. Got a couple of comments in the chat. The first one is from Black Rabbit. He's asking, would you imagine that they sometimes steal the salt licks and take off with them?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's happened a bunch of times. We'd always get our salt blocks from the, we called it the feed and seed store. Okay. Used to be the old co-op. A lot of places back in the day, when they sold you a salt block, that's what you got. It wasn't even wrapped up in paper or anything.
Sure.
And you'd keep those salt blocks in the store in the back, exposed to the weather. And, of course, back in the day, they could smoke cigars and pipes and cigarettes and everything else, and all the other odors was running loose in that store. My granddaddy would always get salt blocks and take them up there and put them on the ground in the feed yard where the horses and the cattle would get. And after they would sit out in the weather for about 10 days, the suckers would start disappearing.
So it's not the horses doing that.
Yes, well, we figured that or the deer or everything else. And whoever was stealing it had to pick them up. They wasn't toting it off in their mouth or nothing like that.
Right.
And we figured it out what it was. That salt would absorb all those odors in that store. And it'd take anywhere from 9 to 10 days for the odors of that store to fade away. When the smell of the odors of the feed and seed shop would fade out after 10 days, something would borrow or steal every one of our darn salt blocks. My granddaddy got smart. He dug a hole in the ground and packed it into the ground where just the surface of it was showing. He said they won't get it in. Now, after 10 days, he come out there and something with fingers had done dug it out of the ground.
Wow. That's incredible. We've got another question. Oh, first of all, a comment. I'm supposed to say hello from BMW, first of all.
Okay.
As you know.
That's Cindy Goodbreak.
Yep, that's Cindy. She's in the chat room right now. Oops, I lost all my chats. It says, another one is from Black Rabbit, and he says, what's a good way, and I don't know if this is something you may have an opinion on or not, because I know we've talked about this before, but what's a good way to tell the difference between Sasquatch and Dogman activity in an area without actually laying eyes on it for conclusive determination? I don't know if you've got much of an opinion on Dogman or not, but...
Well, I've been doing this a long time, and I ain't run into a Dogman yet. I ain't saying he's out there, and I ain't saying he ain't out there. Of course, I am also saying that Bigfoot is real.
Sure.
So how can I say a Dogman's not? Just because I haven't seen one, am I supposed to ride that fence? I haven't seen one that I know of. I've seen some tracks that led me to think it was Dogman. I found them at LBL.
Wow.
But actually not seeing what made the track, I could just as well, could say a Bigfoot needing a pedicure or something fierce.
Yeah.
It did have claws on its feet. That's why the only reason I'm saying if it was a Bigfoot, it needed a pedicure job.
Wow.
But just because I haven't laid eyes on one, I ain't going to say there's not. But I will say this. I have seen some long-snouted Bigfoot before, too. Not so much like a canine, but they did have a elongated snout to a certain degree. And I knew what I was looking at was a Bigfoot. It was not what I would consider a Dogman. So it's hard to say either way. I'm just looking, I guess you'd say, for a hominid that dropped down on all fours and used its knuckles to walk on. That's basically all I'm looking for.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think that you bring up an important point because this is often talked about a lot. There's a do you believe that there are types of Sasquatch, like people say type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, that have different physical characteristics? Or do you just think that there's just a biodiversity to them, much like there is people? I
think it's a biodiversity, just like you say.
Okay.
I know that I have not seen one Bigfoot that has not looked different from each other. Each one has different facial features. Each one has different structure on their facial features. Some of the bigger ones look more like Patty.
Okay.
But a lot of them don't. A lot of the ones in the South, and I think a lot of that's maturity levels. I know that the females, if you use Patty as a template, does not look like the females in the South. The ones down here look like a bigger chimpanzee with a chimpanzee type head shape instead of having a sagittal crest.
Okay.
Their arms don't seem as long as a chimpanzee's, but they are longer than
a human. Sure.
Right.
Okay.
But they have longer leg structure than a chimpanzee.
Okay. Yeah. All the great apes, other than that, of course, the chimps and the gorillas have very, very stout legs, whereas from what I've seen of Bigfoot, and mostly that's Patty, but she's got pretty long legs for a primate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, much like us. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't realize this. You're never going to find a Bigfoot. If you find one, they say that their knees are locked, that sucker's telling you a lie. I have yet to see a Bigfoot with a locked knee posture. When your knees are kind of not locked, but you're kind of in a crouch,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to automatically, your shoulders are going to shoot forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it seem like your arms are a hell of a lot longer than they actually are if you was able to assume an erect posture.
Okay. That's interesting.
Does what I just say make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, we've talked about that the last time you were on too, and I thought that was really, really fantastic because I understand sometimes you hear descriptions where the arms are like past the knees, and it's like, well, how come it's so much longer? Because that's a big discrepancy from a lot of the sightings. Of course, they're longer than ours, and I think actually one of the sources that I think of as Thinker Thunker, and he's got it down to ratios and how the Bigfoot is so much more in a primate ratio like the great apes rather than a human ratio. And I think that's really interesting. But yeah, when you talk about rolling the arms forward, that does explain rolling those shoulders forward. It does kind of explain how come some people see these extraordinarily long arms versus just longer down to the knees.
Well, heck, figure it out, brother. If it's an 8 foot tall one anyway, he's going to have almost 5 foot arm length.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
That's a hell of a reach. Yeah. Wow.
Well, but now think about him. All right, say a drill sergeant shows up and he says, "Attention," and this sucker just decides to snap its heels together, lock its knees, throw its arms back and shoulders back. How far down does its fingertips touch on its thighs? How far down? Think about it. Because when you see them in this sloped over posture, it looks like they could actually touch their kneecaps.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. But it's when they're slouched that's happening. Okay, so we got another question in the chat, and this is from a listener, Android Purity, and he says, if he had to estimate, how fast does he think Bigfoot can run?
Had a guy one time that I trust. This was on his property. He already knows he's got them on his property. He was coming from the back side of the place, which was interconnecting patches of cutover and open fields.
Okay.
And he knew that he was going to be... He kind of looked in his rearview mirror and saw one of these things trying to keep pace with him. So he just decided, well, I'm going to watch and see how long this goes. So he gets it up to about 48 miles an hour, and this thing was keeping up with him real good, and then it peeled off to the left side of the road and hit the woods. So I know that it can get up to at least 46, 47 miles an hour.
Wow. That is flying.
That's fast.
Yeah.
Yes. I think average horse speed is 35.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm thinking, I may be wrong now. I'm just shooting stuff out there. What's a man supposed to be able to average 15 miles an hour or something?
Depends on the man.
I ain't talking about me and you, Don.
I'm thinking we're lucky to break a double digit.
Yeah, I think the only
I
thing
know I'm lucky if I broke a damn sweat.
Oh, I'd break a sweat. I'd probably break a toe too. Like, I think I can roll about 5 miles an hour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But 48 or 45 mile an hour is pretty darn fast.
Right.
Yeah, that's beyond. That's and that stands to reason because I've heard tell people have seen them run down deer.
Right.
And that's got to be no easy feat at all because they're flying. Deer are quicker than hell, and to run down a deer is no small thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. But think about a deer running across an open field, and then think about that deer shooting between tree limbs and then bushes and everything else in its forest environment. And a booger, it has to be not only fast but that dang quick too.
Sure. Yeah. 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 Because
Now that makes him real sudden.
Yeah, like lightning reflexes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oof. Yeah.
Yes. But if you don't have nothing else to do every day,
Yeah.
you can hang out in the gym. Yeah, the jungle gym. You can hang out.
Yeah, I'd probably a little faster if I had to run and catch my food.
Yeah.
But not much.
I wouldn't have been able to have given a guesstimate if it wasn't for the person that told this. I did not trust. And I knew the situation this person lived in, and he had access to having this event more than likely occur. And I trust him for what he shared with me. And he said anywhere from 45 to about 48 miles an hour before he decided to peel off into the bushes. That's all he could tell me.
Well, that's a whole lot better than 45. Well, they can run about 45 to 60 miles an hour. It's like, what the? Well, so, yeah, I mean, 45 to 48 is a believable speed.
Yeah. And even that was bipedally, right?
Yeah.
It was hauling bipedally behind him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was bipedally. And, I would guesstimate, since I've gone out on the limb with somebody else's advice on that one, I would guesstimate that on an average life expectancy, I would think 45 or 48 is a good average number for the lifespan of a booger, too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. That which I suppose if we were living rough, I know that there was a time when human being life expectancy wasn't much beyond that, and
35 years.
Yeah, 35 to 40 years was considered, advanced age.
Right.
And only due to medical, improvements and treatments are we now seeing, 85, 80 for an average, but otherwise we wouldn't be much different.
I don't know of no Bigfoot nursing home to put them in, so
that does bring up a good point, though. Do you think that as they advance in age, that maybe they do get that whole salt and pepper thing, much like we do, much like dogs do? You can always tell when you got
pretty darn sure of it. I've seen what I consider the older ones, and every one of them, they have their own bad case of salt and pepper. A lot of more salt and pepper.
Okay.
But yeah, they get older, and I think they become liabilities to the troop to a certain degree. I think that's why most of them become garbage dump divers.
Sure.
Raid garbage cans.
Right.
Sure.
Roadkill off of highways. Because if you go looking at a lot of the sighting reports, a lot of them usually seen in that capacity are older looking ones, so white, described as white or gray or even injured.
Sure.
I believe when they become a liability to the troops, they're sort of thrown out on their own to a large degree.
Right. I think that makes sense because I mean, I think more and more we're hearing more and more reports coming in of people seeing them in more urban settings, and maybe it's always been that way, but finally people are talking about it. But that stands to reason that as it became too hard to support their life in the wilds, moving in towards us, it'd probably be a buffet, really.
Right.
Yep. Well, if you look at the trends,
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s was when a lot of the country folk moved to the city.
Mm-hmm.
They had and run into people in the city that they fell in love with and started families 20 years later. All right, so now we're into the 80s and the 90s. They are having children, so then they get married. Their offspring are beginning to move to the countries now as tax breaks. They went and got that big education.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're looking to, save as much of their money as they can. So they're moving their, I guess you'd call it a bionic family, everything, cell phone, computer, the whole 9 yards. They're taking their kids and moving to the country.
Mm-hmm.
But see, they're moving to the country with a mind preset where they're watching horror channels and paranormal channels, and
Mm-hmm.
they're more apt to be open-minded towards a Bigfoot where they're moving towards than they are anything else, but yet they're trying to pet skunks thinking they're kittens. I mean...
Yeah, that's a whole different kind of stupid, isn't it?
That's just so
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Boy, that kitty got a hell of a fart.
That'll wreck your whole day. Yeah. Wow.
It'll wreck your whole week.
No, I think that's probably true. And people, I think that, now more than ever, of course, more and more people are having these discussions. I think just going back to Don and I being at the festival this last weekend, and then of course Madeline Falls before that, those are more of a modern event. It wasn't too long ago nobody was talking about Bigfoot, and now it seems like
Nobody.
it's pretty trendy now.
Well, it's trendy, but is it healthy to be that way? And I'll tell you why that is. When I mentioned earlier about getting on the computer in 1999 and finding a whole world of people out there that wants to talk about this thing, just like, for years, especially after my grandfather passed away,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have nobody to talk to.
Sure.
So then you got a whole new line of people out there that is questioning everything. And this is in 1999 to even up till 2007 or 8. But you have so many people coming out of the woodwork now telling not only do these things walk on two legs, they'll jump on all fours and run around as a knuckle walker. They climb trees. They'll do this. They'll do that. You've got more people now that want to make more of less than it is out of this creature. And it causes a lot of confusion. That's why this community will never be taken seriously. It's more acceptable now. I think it was healthy and good to have skeptics. Sure. I'm not talking about assholes who just piss you off because that's all they want to do is make you mad by telling you there ain't no such thing as one with absolutely no proof. Because the first thing they're going to say is, well, where's your proof there is some, Right. But it can be a double-edged sword. That's all I'm saying. We can be too readily acceptable of what people want a Bigfoot to be.
Right. Yep. Well, we got another question in the chat. You want to read that one, Don?
Yeah. So one of our chatters, Black Rabbit, says, "Are you talking about the gifting?"
Yep.
Wants to know if you agree with gifting, like, giving them gifts and food and things like that, and have there been any negative encounters while attempting that have been reported while attempting to gift or habitate?
The only bad reports we've ever had is once somebody started, as this person calls it, gifting. Once they start something, they better be able to finish it. That's when the bad starts. Had people... One guy was in Afghanistan, fighting in the 90s. When he left, he had his grandfather to keep feeding these things while he was in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
While he was in Afghanistan, his grandfather had a heart attack. Mm-hmm. He was placed in the hospital. He had a bunch of goats on his property, and they had 2 German Shepherd dogs and something else. While the grandfather was in the hospital, 57 of his goats were slaughtered and killed, and both of his German Shepherd dogs were killed. Wow. The only thing they could figure out was it was in retaliation for the fact that they wasn't getting their gift.
Wow. So did they just kill the goats, or did they just like eat them too, or what?
Probably ate them.
I didn't hear about the eating part. All I heard was that they killed them, and the son found out about it and got to come back from Afghanistan. But by then, all this damage was done, and he figured out what it was. Was nobody was there to continue gifting their forest friends, you know. Had another situation where somebody moved out of a house after they was gifted because they couldn't pay the rent, and so the new people who moved into the house
didn't know
to keep feeding these things.
Oh, no.
And a couple of them jumped on the roof of the house and got to jumping up and down on the house. They would all the time be throwing rocks and sticks at the house, and they ended up leaving the house. And found out after the fact, the people who originally lived in the house and had to leave were gifting these things every day. Every day.
No.
Now, who is changing the behavior of these creatures? Is it the creatures?
Right.
Or is it somebody giving them something they're not supposed to be given to?
Mm-hmm.
And then once they start it, how do you decide to quit it? On your terms or the Boogers' terms?
Yeah.
I'll even go one deeper than that.
Okay.
Say you feed them chocolate cake every night and you ended up having a heart attack. Somebody else moves into that house, say somebody with a baby son or baby daughter, and these things retaliated against them because of the fact that you was feeding this thing chocolate cake every day. Then this father sees this thing stalking around this house, so he goes and puts a 30-06 slug into one or two of these boogers out there. Now, who is the guilty party through all of that shit?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Yep. You've created a dependency.
Who is the guilty party?
Yeah. Creating a dependency by
the
giving
one that started feeding them the chocolate cake.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you brought up another great point on one of our previous discussions as well from another show. But you were talking about the foods that we eat and what is that to them and how can that affect them. Could you go into that a little bit?
Well, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I was diagnosed 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. I can't have sugar anymore. Every time I eat sugar now, it's my A1C goes sky high. My doctor has a heart attack. He has a worse one than I do. But if you give these things something, I'll even go simpler than that. Let's even go simpler than that.
Okay.
Say you start feeding this thing Snickers candy bars or something all the time. Then all of a sudden, say it's biting down on some meat in the woods and it cracks into a bone trying to get to the marrow, and all of a sudden it splits its eye teeth over here.
Sure.
Then he comes up to your house and tears into that Snickers chocolate bar. Mm. And what in the hell if all of a sudden that thing goes abscessed, or if it starts rotting because of what you give to that innocent creature, one that respects you enough that it don't want nothing to do with you, but you don't respect it enough that you can't leave it alone by giving it a bag of popcorn. But say it has a bad day and it can't eat nothing on that side of its mouth.
Yeah.
That's when it decides to go next door and steal your next door neighbor's cat. Just had a box of kittens, so 4 or 5 kittens show up gone all of a sudden.
Sure.
How do you know that your Snickers candy bar didn't have all of that occur?
Right. Yep. And I'm pretty sure the boogers don't have dentists, so there's no way to fix that.
No, they don't have no dentist.
Yeah.
None.
But I think
Or,
that's...
what if it can't eat no more and then it slowly dies a very painful death?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's important because I don't think, I think people probably do it with the best of intentions, but they really are creating a huge problem. And the other thing is food allergies. We don't know how our really complex processed foods are going to go for them. And it could cause real problems,
Well, look at what peanuts does to certain people. And that's,
yeah.
if you counting in years' time, that was a fairly new thing, even though it's been, since 30 years since we found it out. But there was people actually swelling up and having problems from peanut butter.
Sure.
And how's it not wrote down? Because that's one of the things. Hell, it sounded like I'm telling everybody what not to feed a Bigfoot by telling them what in the hell to feed them. But
yeah,
a lot of people stick peanut butter jars out in the woods. And how do we not know that, we're not... How do we not know that we didn't kill one of the very infant ones?
Yeah.
Who was just so happened to be allergic to this.
Sure.
And this occurred back in the troop sanctuary, and nobody knew this even happened. And you out there telling everybody how much you love the forest people, and you feed them all the time, all this good stuff.
Yeah.
How do you know you're not killing them? How do you know that you haven't already killed one?
Right.
How can a person be... I mean, we was talking earlier about me going out there wanting to prove they exist by killing one, by putting a bullet in it.
Sure.
How do people not know that peanut butter ain't putting a bullet in one every time they stick a can of it out in the woods?
Sure.
I've seen pictures of skunks and possums and raccoons who've got their whole head stuck in those jars.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
And you're just seeing the ones that stumbled around a neighborhood where somebody had a cell phone, or you're seeing the jars out in the woods where these animals are dying a slow, starving death because of that damn jar stuck over its head.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Good point. Another person.
Who's being respectful and who's being disrespectful?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another question from the chat is from Rachel. She says, would it be bad or good idea to plant a separate garden for them to harvest from, to keep them away from your proper crops or your personal crops?
I've heard of that happening, and I've heard of it happening successfully. Also heard of it happening, and then it kept the crows and the coons and the possums and the deer very happy because they loved eating both gardens. But
Sure.
well, if you give them one, they figure they got to have the rest of it, So, but no, I've heard of situations where people planted a separate garden above. My granddaddy never said that he did. He had always planted a lot more black-eyed peas at the upper end, but he also knew that with as many as we had as it was anyway, we was going to get more than our share, so he kind of was doing the same thing. His was just a race to see if he could get them before the boogers could.
Who was quicker at harvest, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you go picking up the rows until you run into the patches where something done been in the middle of it. And it was the same way with the corn. They'll devastate the end rows of some corn. Actually, they'll walk up to a darn cob and take one big old bite out of it, just one bite. Then throw the husk and what's left of the inner cob and the corn on the other side on the ground. One bite, that's all they'll take out of corn.
Really?
Why they do it that way, I have no clue.
So, yeah, that's strange. It's like, do they not like it, or or
No, they love it. They just like it one bite at a time.
One bite of each, one bite at a time. There you go.
I got a bite. I need a fresh one. Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that you know, there's obviously we don't know much at all about these things, but I think you're right. I think leaving them to their own devices and just try to, you know, appreciate what we can is the right approach. But you know, I think people probably have good intentions, but it's just like these are not the birds that you put a bird feeder out and then you can sit and drink coffee and look at the birds.
Right.
You know, you're not going to ever probably sit there and drink coffee and watch the boogers come in and have some donuts. You know?
Yeah. And you know, that's the kicker on it anyway. I mean, how do you know what took that chocolate cake out there in the backyard?
Sure.
And then they sit there and say, well, I saw who done it. And I'm sitting here saying, well, if you saw who done it, how come you haven't got any better photos of it? Well, yeah, I don't want to ruin that relationship I had with them. Well, did you see the booger when it got the cake? No. Well, there is a very happy possum out there who is grinning his ass off with black chocolate licking all around his damn gum line.
Yeah, I think that's true. Now, do you think that they understand language, our language? Do you think there's any possibility that they've learned some of our words?
Very strong possibility, but are they learning individuals' words or are they learning our language, if you get my drift? I know the ones that were on our property would mimic, like my grandmother calling me, my brother, my sister in the house. Mm-hmm. It would mimic her a lot. Oh, and really? I've heard them at times call the cattle call, which was my granddaddy. He'd use it every evening to bring in all of his cows and horses, you know, to pen them up in the evening pasture, so we can keep up with them. And he'd do this, what he called a cattle call, every evening about 5 o'clock. And these things started mimicking my granddaddy doing the cattle call. My granddaddy passed away in 91, and they was mimicking the call up until 2014 on my granddaddy's place, even though my granddaddy had sold all his cattle in 1989.
Wow.
It's strange how that sticks around. I've been told, I've listened to chattering and these recordings of some of the chats from different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. Of course, you know, you compare them up to the California Sierra sounds.
Sure.
I've heard chats from Ohio. I've heard chats from Pennsylvania. I've heard them from Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma. And here's the funny thing about this. We talking about, do they know language? Mm-hmm. I know that every chatter I've listened to from the South has a Southern drawl associated with it.
Really? Wow.
It's funny.
Yeah.
How you can catch that it has a Southern drawl type to the chatter from the South compared to other areas of the country. And I laugh about that. I mean, you could tell a regional difference in the dialects.
Wow. I suppose it happens for us in just using English. Perhaps in their language, it would just have the same effect, just by separation. They would have maybe individual characteristics based on the region.
Well, I've heard certain cultural and First Nation indigenous people say that it's not only interspersed with some what they call American, but they do have various chants that some of the language recognized is of ancient First Nation people in that area. Uh-huh. And then you look at all the dialects. I mean, it's hard to say how in the hell Booger in Tennessee is speaking Sioux native languages into the sea. Was he lost or what, you know?
Yeah.
But I've heard various tribes tell me that they have recognized certain words or phrases in some of the dialect.
Wow. So, like, for instance, listening to the Sierra sounds, they may recognize some indigenous First Nations words.
Probably so.
Okay. Wow.
I think actually, I can't think of that guy's name. He's somewhere out of Indiana. He worked for the Navy for a while, but anyway, he's trying to figure out a language.
Right. Right.
But I don't see how one in the Pacific Northwest would know what one in Florida is saying.
Okay.
I can't see it being a universal language.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I know that even in Australia, when people have reported the samurai speak, and then they hear a recording of the Sierra sounds. Maybe it's just to our ears, but they seem to have the same kind of inflections and the same kind of rapid fire, chattering that they do. But I guess you're right.
Yeah.
We don't know what the hell they're saying, so we can't be sure that they're using the same dialect or a similar tongue in that. But that is very interesting, isn't it?
It seems to me like it is. Is a Yeti going to talk like one from China, the Yaren, or
Yaren? Yeah, yep.
It's just fascinating to think of it.
It is.
But if you think about it, even whales and dolphins have regional dialects and even different types. It seems. This is what's reported, that they have different languages and dialects. So why couldn't Sasquatches and Bigfoots? I mean, because we have different languages and dialects, it makes perfect sense. Like you said, you've heard them with the southern drawl. That's kind of odd. But, maybe up here in the Pacific Northwest, they sound like idiots from Seattle. I hope not, but whatever. So, it makes sense. I mean, it's reported that even sea creatures have different dialects and different types of language. So
yeah. Well, I guess, that makes perfect sense. It's certainly not something that gets discussed, but I think that's a...
Well, it's because we don't speak whale or porpoise for that matter.
Or Bigfoot for that matter.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're in Russia, I suppose.
Yeah.
Hey, we have somebody asking a question about population. I know what I saw is asking, do you think there's more Sasquatch now than, say, 50 or 100 years ago? And I think we've talked about population with you before. What do you think the current population might be?
Maybe, and this may be conservative, 1,000 a state, with maybe some of the smaller states producing less, whereas some of the bigger states have larger numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's say, all right, 50 states, and I ain't counting the Hawaii as one of them, unless he swims really well. But 1,000 a state. What is that? 44,000.
4,900. Yeah.
What is that?
That'd be
4,900.
Yep.
That ain't no unreasonable number there.
Mm-hmm. It seems like that,
Because
there's more and more there's more and more reports coming out.
right.
So
is there more of them, or is there just easier to talk about?
Yeah.
So the population versus 50 years ago.
I know 50 years ago people wouldn't talk about them as easily as they will now.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. But do you think that's do you think people are getting that impression because is it possible, due to our continued encroachment into the wild areas, are they just getting pushed out and maybe observed more often now, and that's giving the illusion of a higher population? Or do you think that maybe they're doing better because I don't know why they would do better.
Well, if you go back, let's take those numbers I started out earlier with. I like using them, I guess, because I was born in '60. But in the '60s, when everybody started moving from the country to the cities, back in those days, you didn't tell nobody nothing. Remember how I come up?
Yep.
Grandpa told us, what you saw you didn't see, don't go telling everybody about it. They're going to give you teetotal hell about it. And he was right.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays, you can walk into a crowd of people that you don't even know and say, hey, how many in here believe in Bigfoot? And I guarantee you're going to down there start a conversation with somebody.
Sure. Yeah,
but you couldn't do that in the '60s.
Right.
Look at the ridicule. Let's take, for instance, Bob Gimlin, in the Roger Patterson film. He quit wanting anything to do with the subject when all this shit hit the fan with him back in those days.
Sure.
Bob put up with a lot of ridicule.
Yeah.
Here was a hunting guide, somebody who goes out in the woods and receives a good check from, just surviving by hunting, taking out hunting tours in the backcountry. That's how he got up with Roger Patterson. It hurt his business. And for him to, come out and admit to being a part of that. The '60s, that was not a pretty time to tell anybody that you saw a monster.
Right.
Right. Sure.
Now, 2021, everybody's been seeing the monster.
Right.
And then some, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Getting back for a second, because I shoot all over creation like a shotgun. Dogman, for instance. The Dogman community, you can't get one side to say whether it walks upright like a hominid or it has legs like a kangaroo or a regular dog. In other words, it needs being backwards, just like a dog's does. But you can't get two Dogman people to agree on that.
Sure. Yep.
Now, which one's the Dogman? The padded foot or the 5-toed foot with a bad pedicure? I have no clue.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. By the way, someone came in and said, who let this country boy on the show? Ha, ha, ha. Good to hear Bear's voice. That's Wes. Wes is in the chat room.
Oh, Lord. Hey, Wes, how you doing, bro?
So yeah, I think it's fascinating, but you got to wonder if we are displacing them perhaps as well by our continued expansion into the wilder places. Everybody wants that nice house on the wooded hill, looking at the beautiful valley, and how does that affect these generations of lifestyle that are now affected by this new house there, and does that displace them then? And how far can they go?
Of course.
Of
course. As long as they've got backup plans, like my property, in Mississippi, it's near a military reservation. And when things get too rough over there, my side of the country, the first thing they'll head straight to that military reservation.
Okay.
At times I wonder, Brent and Don, a lot of our reservoirs and dam waters and national parks and state parks and federal parks, if you look at a lot of the Corps of Engineer water project systems, especially in the east, most of those systems took up a lot of land, but it also created a lot of acreage where no hunting is allowed and only camping and no firearms and certain things like that. Plus, a lot of that area is designated national forest and military reservations, and nuclear power plants and big tax liens that spread way out from major municipalities. A lot of those areas, could they not be in a roundabout sort of way protected locations for Bigfoot to have areas to go to for safety zones?
Wow.
And you can't tell me that they don't recognize the areas where there are no shooting, because I know better than that. These things know where to go when it comes time to getting the hell out of Dodge.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it stands to reason, right? That they would know where there's no hunting. But don't you also think that when hunting happens for them, it's kind of like ringing the dinner bell? Like, don't you think they probably steal a lot of kills and get the low hanging fruit that way?
Yeah, they do. Not all the time, but they have taken advantage of the situation their fair share number of times, especially on bad shots anyway. A lot of deer end up
got shot or
sort
whatever.
of disappearing. Yep. But no, it seems to me on my property, the way hunting season works, the week before Thanksgiving is always when hunting season with a rifle or firearm starts.
Okay.
And then this is about the week before Thanksgiving. Week after Thanksgiving is when it seems like the white-tailed deer increase on my property than they did during the Thanksgiving season. Thanksgiving season, when the boogers were still there, when enough hunting pressure occurred in the surrounding area, a lot of shots were, shot at wild game or just sighting guns or whatever. But anyway, enough sign or evidence showed that hunting pressure was beginning to increase, so we better go find us a safe area, which is normally near the deer camp where I hunt. It's going to be that military reservation. And if everybody will think about it who listens to this show, I guarantee you that somewhere near you there's a park or a national forest or a state-owned forest or a military installation or something is near you where these things don't have to worry about human presence. They'll go to these locations and don't have to deal with people just coming and going as they please.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. We got another question in the chat here. It says, Bear, why is it that some people that have had experiences or sightings of these things find themselves winning the Bigfoot lottery and you can't get away from them? So it's like if somebody sees them, suddenly they just seem to be like a magnet, to attracting more sightings or experiences. What do you think's going on there?
A lot of that depends. I've worked with a lot of First Nation groups with this, and a lot of them would tell you that it's all a peace of mind that a person projects when they go into the woods. It's not the person that head is swiveling in 400 different directions at once. They're the type person that when a booger gets around one of them, they said, "The heck with this! I can't watch my own ass because he's watching it for me because he's damn sure looking for it." And they say that if you go in the woods with a devil may care attitude, go in there like you're not hunting nothing, go in there like you're not taking something from the forest, just go in there carefree, have a good time, walk around, look at everything, listen to everything. You'll have more success of one. I guess they called it sort of like a demon, that person worthy enough to present themselves to them. I've heard of that happening before. It's never happened with me. But I could see that attitude prevailing, whereas one that's trying to take something by force or in an incorrect way would not have any luck or success at all doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It does help to understand what you're looking for.
Sure.
You're not going to see a full-fledged body.
Mm-hmm.
If you know how to be sly about your actions, if you see something quick, motion or movement in front of you, don't focus on that entirely. Make note of where it's at, kind of be panning the woods and looking more back in that direction through the corner of your eye. You can catch more movement from the corner of your eye better than you can looking at something dead straight on.
Right. Yeah. That's funny because that actually comes up a lot in ghostly experiences as well. People always catch things out of the corner of their eye, and oftentimes when they turn and look, they can't see nothing, but they know they keep seeing motion. So I think that you're absolutely right. It must be the way our eyes work. It really does.
I know the more you want something, it always plays out that there's less chance of it coming to fruition. I mean, it just works that way.
Right.
The more you want it, the less shot that it will ever happen.
Sure.
If you just sit there and just enjoy yourself, whatever you're doing out there in the woods,
mm-hmm.
you probably have a better option of seeing one doing that than you ever would while you're sitting there looking for one behind every blade of grass.
Sure.
I mean, and
sure.
Well, that just creates a nervous atmosphere, and boogers don't like nervous. They don't like it at all.
Well, I think you mentioned something really important, and that is that they deem you worthy. Because I agree. I think that they are the ones deciding if there's going to be a sighting or not. It's not that we're so good that we catch them. They just choose to let us see or not, because they clearly are so far advanced to us physically and with their capabilities in the forest that we're not going to sneak up on them. We're not going to surprise them. They know we're there. So I think
I've even heard people talk of a lot of sightings on the reports
mm-hmm.
are where one crosses the road in front of you, and it's usually at night. It does happen in the daytime occasionally, but it happens more so at night than it does any other time. A lot of people want to say that this is a game to them, that they
mm-hmm.
just sticking their head out of the woods so they can see the reaction of the people in the vehicles, but that's further from the truth than anything.
Okay.
That's like saying a white-tailed deer crosses the highway just so it could commit suicide on your vehicle. That ain't the case. A lot of times headlights and the sound of a vehicle coming down the highway, and an animal has almost committed itself to crossing at that location, all it's thinking about is getting from point A to point B, which is the other side of the highway. Then it gets up there, say, to the road line, and then it hears a vehicle coming down the road. Or if at night, not only is the vehicle coming down the road, it's blinding the hell out of me with those bright-ass headlights. I can't see what I'm doing.
Sure.
So maybe it's best for me to hurry up and get across this highway as quick as I can, not knowing how close the headlights are or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times it's the nervousness of the deer or the Bigfoot that tries to cross the highway that prompts them into making those crossings where they actually are seen. Mm-hmm. I don't think those sightings are premeditated or planned out. I think it's just their nervousness of getting from point A to point B is what caused the sighting to actually occur in the first place.
Oh, okay. So it was like an anxiety. Because I know before we've talked about that, and you brought up a very interesting perspective about like the counting coup. Like, mm-hmm. is that a situation where they're like, hey, watch this, hold my beer, I'm gonna run across the road, because I know they can hear our cars coming for miles, So, what do you think?
Well, it's not only that. I've walked up out of some deep ass bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
And not even known that I was taking the next step on that level plane onto a road. I didn't even know a road was anywhere in the country. And then once, with that cliff face in front of me, and I'm proceeding up the hill, out of breath, there I go again, picking on you again, Don. Me and you be huffing and puffing up that damn hill. But I didn't even realize the proximity of that road, even with traffic coming back and forth, until I got, boom, there I was on the road, and then boom, there vehicles are.
Wow. Okay.
Me and you, no one like me and you know, well, hell, we've learned our whole lives, don't you dare cross that street unless you look both ways before you cross that highway.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a booger ain't getting that damn homeschooling, you know?
Sure.
All it knows is it walked up this damn mountain. It wants to get to the other side of that road. It looks up. There's traffic coming from both directions. And I'm standing here like a dumbass wide out in the open, which is the last place I want to be. And so, boom, he goes across the road.
Well, that's important too. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect explanation. I think that's very possible. But I think in terms of people seeing them in the forests, they do choose that, though, right? I mean, do you agree with that?
I think most of the times it is.
Yeah.
Accidents do happen.
Sure.
I have seen these things. I run up on them, and it looks as scared of me as I'm as scared of him. And I can see that happening all the time.
Sure.
I've seen it with other wild animals on TV, bear or whatever. A lot of times you walk up on each other, not even thinking one or the other is in that part of the same part of the world at the same time. What are the odds of that happening? I see accidents do happen.
Sure.
That even goes so far back, which I'm not playing on anybody or messing with people. If this thing could fade in and out of existence like it did, it's said that it could, it sure picks some hellacious opportunities to pop in and out. Why don't they just foresee what there is they can pop in and on? Then it wouldn't be as much headache and excitement.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, it's a conundrum all the same, but I think it's
it's fun. It's a great adventure. If people love getting outdoors and they know everything minutely about the outdoors, and I ain't talking about just going down to your city park.
Yeah.
I'm talking about going out in the woods and just having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Say, hey, I'm going out looking for Bigfoot. You really ain't going out there looking for Bigfoot because you ain't finding Bigfoot anyway. If anything, he's finding you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to do it, is allow him to pick and choose. Then once he picks and chooses and looks at you for a little while, he may decide you're worthy enough to present itself to.
Sure.
So, see, then you can walk around with a big head saying, look at me, everybody, I'm special. And that'll get you a donut.
That'll get
and
you
maybe
a donut.
coffee.
And an interview on the Paranormal Portal.
Yeah, one of them too.
Well, brother,
oh man,
it's an adventure always, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've actually burned through 2 hours now.
Always do. Always have fun when time flies.
Yeah.
The Bigfoot Outlaw Radio is not gone. I want to say that before you run me off.
Oh.
We're coming back. We may not come back 4 or 5 shows a year. I think that's plenty of shows to do. Our objective is not to see who is the flavor of the week to put on the show. We're just going to do mainly a lot of things that we've learned through trial and error, going out there stumbling around, running in the tree trunks looking for a booger that we're told don't exist, but we know different. Why would we waste our time otherwise? Because if we are, we show spending a lot of money that we don't need to be blowing on nothing.
Well, they can find that on Bigfoot Crossroads page on YouTube, right?
Yeah, they can find it on Bigfoot Crossroads. We do have a Facebook page. Anybody can join. It's called Bigfoot Outlaws Hideout. Hideout, one word. Bigfoot Outlaw Hideout. If you want to talk to us over there, a lot of us, we do post pretty regularly, and we keep up with things over there. But that's how you can keep up with us more so is Bigfoot Outlaw Hideout on Facebook. When the radio show comes back, we'll let everybody know plenty of time. We'll even let you know so you can talk to folks for us.
We'll do that for sure. Absolutely, brother. And
Enjoyed it, Don.
Yeah, we made it, and it was a good one as always, Big Brother Bear.
absolutely.
You know, if you need me, you know where to find me.
All righty.
Well, we'll definitely have to get you back on some point in the near future, but it's always been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate your insights and your down-home approach to all this. It's been an absolute pleasure as always, brother. Thank you again.
Appreciate y'all too, guys. Y'all keep doing what you're doing, because y'all must be doing something right. Y'all got bigger than the last time I thought we could.
I know. People keep putting up with us, so that's a good thing. But ladies and
Y'all good old boys.
well, thank you. And thanks for being a part of our journey as always, brother. And ladies and gentlemen, catch up with Bear on Facebook at facebook.com/Bigfoot Outlaws Hideout. And also on their YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bigfoot Crossroads is where you can catch some of their episodes on there. There's a ton of them on there too, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you all, to come and do these shows. And thank you to all of you who showed up. If you're not subscribed, please get subscribed. There'll be more great shows in the near future. Don, you got anything in closing?
No, I just wanna let Bear know that all of our chatters is saying thanks for being on, thanks for giving the information, and just being a good old boy you are. So thank you all, thank you Bear, and there you go.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you all for being here. And as always, we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. Good night, everybody.